Welcome to the Power Up Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Scullion. Join me for some powerful conversations with members of the Substation Design Solutions Industry Consortium, the SDSIC. I'll chat with members about the consortium, innovations, how they're implementing different technologies, even some of the projects they're working on to address the growing needs of our power grid. Today's guest is Josh Clark. Josh is a design drafter at PPL Electric Utilities and the chair of our Physical Committee for the SDSIC. Thanks for joining me today, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. So listen, as you know, this podcast was really for SDSIC members, right? We're 1,700 strong. So we wanted everyone to get to know some of the longest standing members, get to know the chairs and co-chairs and the backgrounds of people that volunteer for this thing. So we really started with kind of all the leadership team and longstanding members, and then we'll go on further and keep going and talking to different members. So to that end, let's talk about your background a little and how you got into PPL.
Basically went to school for drafting. Started out as in a precaster doing precast walls, and eventually got into PPL drafting.
Okay.
Hired on there. So, and then when it came time to do the, we're looking at 3D and some other things that we want to, get new technology, and get into. I was part of that initial team unfortunately we had an older staff, a lot of experience, a lot of good experience, but I was the young guy of the group. So that was kind of how I got elected by default to go after new technology, being the young guy. And it evolved into, we had a team at first, and the team kind of went to team of one in the beginning. Wow. So it was just me in the beginning that stood a lot of this, with help from other people outside of PPL to move this on. And I've been heavily involved ever since.
Wow. So what was castings? Was it like metal castings you went to school for?
Well, I went to school for drafting, but I started with a precaster. They did precast walls. So they had a plant and they cast, controlled climate of cast panels and stuff. And then they trucked them into a job site. So basically they did big warehouses, national accounts with Lowe's, Home Depots,
gotcha.
Kind of neat.
Cool.
If you like buildings, it was kind of neat, but
yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. So that was what technology were you using when you did that?
We were using AutoCAD, but it involved it's funny, we talk about technology even here and how things progressed. And originally when I started there, we did, it was all AutoCAD and they'd go out and they'd produce the panels that they made. It was, by tape measure and marking this stuff off and everything on the beds. And then what it entailed till, I left there was they were actually taking that AutoCAD image, it was actually done in 3D. We actually layered it in 3D, program that we had modified, and they laser projected all that stuff on. So no longer was the tape measure used to casting the bed, and our accuracy went up tenfold from that. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was quite interesting. So I was actually exposed to kind of the 3D process a little bit there in the manufacturing, a little bit different from what we're doing today, but still that idea of 3D and being able to capture everything, so accurately and stuff was important.
That's great. And when I met you, I think you were already on Inventor and everything when I met you.
Yeah, when we met, we just started, had our training in Inventor, and we were getting the toolkit under, I don't know what version, one of the early versions.
Yeah. Early versions.
Early versions. And of the team in the beginning, the first person I met in person, and a shout out, and I know he passed, but we met Dan. We drug Dan up from Florida to PA in still the cold weather. So how we managed that, I don't know, but Dan was present, and I always remember that we were one of the few that I got to meet Dan in person.
That's right. Yeah, Dan. So Dan Gerlach that has passed on. And we have an award for Dan up on the SDSIC website now, kind of honoring folks that are putting in innovation into the SDSIC. So yeah, thanks for that, man. That's great memories of Dan. He certainly did a lot for the industry and came up with a lot of technology back then. So yeah, he always loved working with you guys. It's one of the ways he got him out of the house.
Yeah, I always remember, our conversations always seem to start up. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or if there's an error in the program.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Dan was, he was, he had a master's in like rocket science and a minor in computer science. So we used to tell him, it's not rocket science, Dan. Come on. You got this, right? But, he'd get quiet when he couldn't explain something. So dude, let's touch on some of your kind of 3D experiences then. Like you had to have seen some pretty good advantages, like you just mentioned, even the work you did at PPL.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw it way back even before I started at PPL with, like I said, at the precaster. So, it was the idea of being able to put everything into a space and work out your design and check your clearances and, the bill of material to automatically develop. And I think of along the way of the things that we've had and done on the projects, how much better it was, the visual experience of seeing it in 3D and what changed, helped change and modify our designs and struggle, get through those challenges that we might have on any given project. I think the visual aid alone is worth everything. It explains, especially for somebody new coming in that doesn't know, what's a substation, and not a lot of people out there have, utility experience, or you're getting people fresh out of school, to be able to show stuff to them and if physically can kind of see it, on a screen at least versus, having to go out in the field. And especially since it's, you go out into the field, there's a level of danger involved, that you have to, make sure you're safe. There's live components there. You can't get close to anything, but in the 3D, when you're working on a computer, you can see all that stuff. You don't really have to worry about getting shocked. I wouldn't say it never getting shocked, but it's not like being out in the field there. So I think that's, that's the first and thing that you see, the advantage of all this new technology and whatnot out there, that 3D has its advantages. You have those nice, pretty pictures and you could show that off. And that really gets everybody oohing and wowing.
Yeah. It really is one of those technologies that once you move from kind of a 2D drafting world and you start doing 3D, it's almost impossible to go backwards. You don't want to go back to 2D and making section and elevation drawings by hand or any of that stuff, right? It's like you see the Matrix.
Yeah, you said it there. It's like having to go back and do a 2D print or update a 2D drawing. It's not related to your 3D model. It's like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
It even gets to the point where, we're using Inventor, and when I have to go to use AutoCAD, it's like, I don't want to use AutoCAD anymore. Yeah. It's like Inventor now.
Yeah. I mean, it's without any intelligent 3D tools or anything, right? It just got painful to update a bill of material table by hand, painful to have to update a sketch on a side view, or does it match the top view? I mean, forget that.
I think one of the things I noticed the difference is, when you had AutoCAD, you just clicked on it and made it work or edited the text to say whatever you wanted it to say, where an intelligent 3D model, you're not doing that. If it's coming out with the wrong text, so, well, that means my property is wrong and I have to go in and back and edit that. So it's not the dumbed down thing. There's a little bit more that you have to be concerned about as far as making a change, but it's nice when you make the change in the model and then your 2D drawing is already updated when you get there. So
yeah, that's right. Yep. You focus on the model and the drawings are free.
Yep.
I remember looking at hand drawings. It was clearly a rectangle, but if you looked at the 2 dimensions, it was like 36 by 36 because someone just changed the text, right? It's like, well, that's confusing as hell.
I can never get past it. Well, it looks like it's square. This is supposed to line up with one another, and it really is not supposed to. It's just how somebody sketched it in.
It was creative. Very creative.
Yeah, that's for sure. Is it really a straight line?
Yeah. Well, and you were one of the first people with PPL that was showing and really talking about VR. Like, I mean, years ago, I remember talking with you and we were trying to set up some demos and things, but you were really kind of pushing that envelope. You touched on 3D, but you were really thinking about training and trying to do all that stuff many years ago.
Yeah, we tried. We were actually, I remember that early on working with you, that we actually accomplished taking one of our substations that we had modeled in Inventor and pushing it all the way into VR and being able to walk it. And we actually used it as we got new engineers in, and while we were in the office, we used it as an experience for them to, people got a real kick, especially, as you get to the younger folks that are more into technology and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to see that was quite the thing. It's our challenge with that was just the sheer and massive data and all the parts that we had to do something like that. And I remember I was actually working on with a gaming engine to try and make something, and I'm by no means am I a programmer, so that's why it didn't go so well. But I actually had it. I had one of our subs in a gaming engine that I could kind of like walk around and had some kind of clash detection on it, so that it didn't allow you to actually walk into a building or kept you away kept you away from a structure. You could actually walk into the building, into the entrance, the door and everything. You can actually go into the control cube. And awesome. I was actually getting, trying to get some of the data over and stuff was, somewhat of a challenge, but I had it so that the parts were actually showing up, that, you select the individual parts, they were kind of highlighting. And then and unfortunately, things with the job, you had to change focus and commit. Couldn't spend all the time that I wanted to on that. That was would certainly like to pick that up one of these days again. But
like anybody early into that, man, you started that early and you were on the bleeding edge, because it's certainly come a long way now, and it probably a lot more we could do if we took another visit to that. But you were pretty early, man. So it was bleeding edge trying to get that stuff going. But it was good foresight.
A lot of that stuff out there that free to use just couldn't handle the sheer size of our models and everything. We definitely, I think back then we were pushing the breaking limit of a lot of things.
That's right. They said, "Oh, that's why they charge for software." There you go. That's really the freebies are tough to compile. Well, that's good, man. So let's talk about how you got involved with the SDSIC, because I remember you being there early. I don't know how long you've been there now.
It was our first time visiting was down in Alabama. Okay. Birmingham, or whatever year. I always lose track. Whatever. Yeah. I know we started our 3D journey kind of like we went to a couple of utilities. I think Duke was one of the big ones that we talked to in the beginning, as far as benching with, but we kind of started on our own before getting onto the consortium, and somewhat I wish we wouldn't have had to, especially because it was at the time that was, like I said before, it was really just me. So having somebody else to bounce questions off of and this and that when we were getting started would have been a great help. Somehow we managed to get something working, and then when we joined the consortium and everybody kind of looked at the landscape of everything, and wow, we were right there with some of the people that had started the consortium, kind of by kind of I'll say a little bit of luck involved in that. But I think it was a little bit of a miss on our part to not sign up as early. We were encouraged to get involved, but we didn't. We held back a little bit, and I think we would have been better off getting in, especially once we made that commitment when we were doing this type of thing, to get involved, just have somebody else to talk to and work through ideas, because it's so a massive amount of scope of what you're trying to do, and it's hard to focus in on those little pieces sometime, or you get sidetracked on some of the little pieces and forget about the bigger picture. So, but that was our involvement, and I think I attended one face-to-face, and next thing I know, I'm got on the monthly meetings and started participating, and they were asking me to do more.
So was it I'm wondering, like, who first got you involved? Because I know you were co-chair first for the physical committee.
So one of our founding members, I hope we'll hear from him on one of these podcasts soon. Jeremy Morton was the guy that reached out to me and got me. He was the chair at the time of the physical committee, and he needed a co-chair, and he reached out to me and asked me if I was interested. And basically, he started my involvement as far as the leadership here at the consortium. And then I also have to shout out to John Thomas, who was the chair of the whole consortium at the time as well. Great support and really coaching me on a lot of my speaking, my public speaking, and just helping me along be a leader of this organization. So those two guys really started it off, and of course yourself, Trevor, there as well, helping me out with things.
Yeah, you've done a great job, Josh. And yeah, I mean, big shout out to Jeremy. So I did get Jeremy on a podcast. We just have to edit it and get it published. But yeah, I had Jeremy on. I'm trying to track down John Thomas too. So yeah, I mean, they're such good mentors in the whole consortium, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I had never met them before, talked to them before I got involved with the consortium. I had no idea who they were, but they welcomed me with open arms, like anybody, I think, here at the consortium will. It's just such a friendly environment, and everybody wants to help each other out. And it showed really what the consortium is about not only, helping you out as far as, the work things that you're doing, the challenges there, but then just as a person and, being a leader and everything, you have a lot of great support there especially from members that have been involved for such a long time or there at the beginning.
Yeah, it's been great watching you grow, man. You have really, and Jeremy did give you a shout out on his podcast. When you hear that, it's been very impressive to see how you picked it up and ran with it, right? Jeremy touches on it, like a lot of introverts in engineering and design that are in the office making things happen, but not someone to get up on stage and talk in front of 1,000 people, right? So it's way out of your comfort zone.
Oh yeah, we're like those typical people you think of, locked in your cubes, and weird individuals that you show light and they go hiss, and everything else.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's like everything you just described is a perfect lead-in for the SDSIC for all the new folks listening, right? It's maybe not the most coddled group, but everyone's there to support you and help and try to get you involved, and there's no bad ideas that are shouted out. Everyone's taken serious, and there's some great ideas and concepts that come from those kinds of discussions anyhow.
Wow, absolutely, because it's so big, as broad as what we're trying to do. So, kind of everybody's working on little pieces. So you pick up little things, whether you're, been doing this for years or just getting involved, to get started at. But everybody's so open, about, sharing and helping one another with things in that environment. And I hope listening to some of this stuff that you can see that we have a good time, and we're not, we do, get stuff done and do the work and stuff, but very friendly group, and, with each other. It's, kind of, some of my best friends now are part of this consortium, and it met through all this, working together and networking.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and it's it has been. We keep it pretty light, and I think it's great to have it kind of lighthearted, and a lot more discussions happen because folks don't feel threatened, and there's no kind of animosity, right? And they just get the ideas flowing.
Yeah, and I think everybody's so approachable. You can come up to anybody as far as, the leadership or experienced people and strike up a conversation. Anybody's more than welcome. And it doesn't matter whether you're, a drafter like myself or, all the way to an executive. I've met executives of big companies and stuff, and I can talk to them just as I would talk to a fellow drafter or engineer. Whatnot. So I think that's, one thing that's really impressed me over the run and involvement with the consortium.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a great point for all the folks just joining and just getting started here. And I want to just point out that you've done such a good job. You got reelected again, didn't you?
Yeah. Yep. I signed up, but you're stuck with me for another 2 years.
No, but it's a big shout out to you that you kept going. You do such a good job. I don't think anyone even felt that you needed to be challenged for any kind of, everyone I talked to said, no, Josh has got to do it again. Like we can't let him leave.
They don't want to let go.
Yeah, so it's great, man. Congratulations. So that was Kansas, right? You got reelected again as chair?
Yep. We got reelected. Appreciate that shout out. Again, I try the best that I can and give everything that I got towards it, and keep everybody involved. From beginners to people that have been there for time. I want to make sure I'm hitting everybody. That everybody finds value within something that we're doing. Here in the physical committee, at least that I can control.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's very true that I think early on, just trying to get people involved and trying to keep them involved. It's volunteer work. You don't get paid. It's all extra outside of your current day-to-day jobs and everything. So, big thanks to you for doing it for so long and keeping it going and doing such a great job, man. Every monthly call, yours is the most filled committee by far. It's just been absolutely incredible the amount of interest you get every month, and at the meetings themselves, it's the biggest room pretty much all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many a face-to-faces. Our committee's been bursting at the seams in some of the meetings. I think that's part of our content, and we have some great presenters that present all the time out there. Trying to get everybody involved on that. And like you said, and I don't know what it is, but we've had an uptick too in our monthly calls as far as the people attending. It seems, or especially at the beginning of the year, our numbers have been high. So shout out to everybody that's been on those calls, and thank you, and keep supporting us.
Yeah, that's true. So let's touch the monthly calls. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know it's tough when some folks are coming in, and that's kind of what we're hoping this podcast will do, is give people a chance to listen to it and understand what your committee is about and everything before they get on a call. Your name pops up on the Zoom and you're worried you're going to get called out or questions, anything. But let's talk about the monthly calls. Like, what's the expectation? Just people join and you guys have a chat about what?
Yeah. I'll say I will start out with answering the one question, as I don't call people out. I mean, the only one that I may call out is some of our software supporters, that we have on the line. We typically, have those software people there throughout our, the monthly calls, or like my co-chair or something, just if I forgetting something. And or other consortium leadership. That's about all you will hear me call out anybody.
There you go.
On the thing. As far as anybody else, I do not call anybody else out. We do pretty regular meet every month. I think when we have a face-to-face meeting or something like that, do I cancel a meeting out there? But for the most part, I try and update everybody on what's going on overall with the consortium, if there's any news on that stuff, and really try and dive into what we're doing with 3D is, offer people a chance to ask questions, or are they stuck on anything. We get a lot of software updates from the tools that we use within our meetings, so we're always kind of kept up there, and anything try and promote anything that else that our community may find useful, whether it's new, what's new with new programs, or this or that, that other members are supporting other webinars on there. We just started a subcommittee for documentation, so we have, as far as all the other committees go, I think we have the most best practices in the industry already. We've decided to put a new focus, and I started a subcommittee to try and get more help with that, alleviate a little bit of pressure for myself. Obviously I can't write all of them. I need some supporters to write those, but try and get some best practice. I mean, I think back to one of our simple best practices is just where to have the Z-axis, and we set the standard of having the Z-axis up, so it really allows for when you're sharing models and stuff, that you're getting something that you can use right away from somebody else, if you do some of these common little things on there. So we're looking for more things like that do best practice. And I always do a section that I call show and tell, and really it's to do some kind of demo or something with whatever 3D related software. I'd love for more people to be a part of it, as far as showing what they're working on. Typically that's a lot of where I get my ideas, that I show stuff, just showing you, what I'm doing on a project, using 3D, or, something that came up, whether it was creating drawings or creating a model. I think their last meeting, I just showed, how to, work kind of smarter versus harder type of approach. And we were doing, putting a cabinet on a breaker, and we're doing it a number of times, where we're putting the same install where you're having a cabinet and conduit and a bunch of pieces that go on there. So, just that I created assembly that I can actually attach, a little sub-assembly that I can attach to another big assembly, but I can just copy it throughout. I really only had to built it a little smarter so that it can go in and plop on these other locations. But it just goes, showed kind of a little bit of how I did that, and that it can just, get copied around and plopped around on all these other breakers. But I really only had to build one assembly to do that. And then, you get that advantage of being able to quickly do, I think it's 6-7 breakers that we were doing.
Oh, wow.
So now that the copy my work, instead of putting all those pieces in, 7 times on the breaker, that's a lot of work versus, now I just copy my assembly, boom, over, and done. On to the next one. So, I always try and bring something like that, or, if somebody has a question, for me, even like, that I get ahead of time, maybe, I think that's a good one. I'll show, what we did, at least, and it'll start conversation, whether we're talking about, Vault or 3D, some of the like folder setup. And we've had some good conversations that just started out like something simple like that, talking about what to do with a vendor model or something, that stuff. So really try and bring something that, everybody can use and get a piece. I mean, I had somebody saw the model that I was, showing this past month, and noticed something on there and asked me a question about it, later after the meeting, send me an email, and it wasn't even something per se that I was presenting about, but just something that they noticed within the model, and just asked me how I did that and what they were curious. So then, by showing stuff like that, you'll generate questions like that maybe somebody, they don't want to reach out on the call, but they will reach out to you, and more than happy to try and get you an answer. I tell everybody all the time.
Yeah, see, that's good. That's a good explanation of the monthly calls. And so for all the members, that are listening and thinking of joining, and, it's really that I love the show and tell. I mean, some of the projects that you guys show, Mark Thomas from Duke, and like you guys showed, just an example of like, I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm just showing you how we did it for this specific project. People ask questions, you get to show them, kind of like you said, show and tell, and go through it. I even like the technology stuff where, some user will say something like, hey, have you ever tried this add-in for Inventor, right? And you get it from the Autodesk store, and maybe it fills out bill of material. I don't know, anything like this. Everything is wide open. And the more open collaboration you have with just that kind of show and tell, man, the ideas that come out are amazing.
You talk about the ideas. I think back to, obviously you've been part of the consortium for a while, part of some of the tools that we've used. We've seen the evolution of some of those tools through the years. And you look back at some of the things that got changed or added to these tools, it really came down to those monthly calls, those conversations, the challenges that were brought up. And how, somebody asked, well, how can I get this to run from here to there, A to B, it won't connect, or, I want to run, I know in the beginning, we can only run one cable at a time, where you want to run 2 or 3, multiple cables. And really that came apart, some of that came a part of, being in the monthly calls, and people, saying that they have, challenges with this and presenting, and it wasn't, something we kind of maybe worked through at the time, but the software eventually caught up, in the tools that we use to some of those things. So I always think of those enhancement ideas. A bunch of them have started within the monthly calls and whatnot, and people talking to each other, presenting their problems.
Oh, absolutely.
The fixes that we've gotten.
Yeah, that's another great point for all the folks listening, right? I mean, as a software person, I used to leave those calls with like a list of things we had to look at and try to do and try to improve. But, that's a point for folks joining your call. Challenge the software guys. You don't need to just listen and watch. You got to ask them, hey, can you do this or that? Or, here's the challenge, could you do that with the software? And Yeah, it's all those enhancements come from those conversations.
Yeah, I remember those early days. You'd come with that list, and we had to, which ones do you want first?
Yeah, let's list the number
Yeah,
these
yeah.
things.
And of course, somebody, always chimed in all,
Yeah.
as first comment back. But, really when it come down to it, said, no, this is more important than this. And we'd work through it. And, you'd have your top 10 or whatever it might be from a
Yeah.
list of 20 or 40 in those
That's
early
right.
days.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money, dude. All the memories are coming back. I remember all those times we were doing that, but it's such a good thing, and it's the same with Autodesk or partners. We have Imagine It coming to meetings now. They're doing training. They have all these techniques and things. There's a lot of things that can happen from those, including Vault workflows, as you mentioned, right? Folders and different ways to do it. Once they can listen to the calls, listen to the projects, and they, as vendors, understand what we're trying to do with this utility space. And then they come back with like, hey, look at this example. It's a win-win all around. And I was going to ask you what you wanted from members, but I guess that's it, right? Bring your questions, bring your challenges, bring your
Yeah,
show.
pretty much. It's even like I said before, it don't matter what level of experience you might be looking at something a little bit different that nobody else looked at, and it might spur a conversation, an enhancement needed, or something that we can add to our model. I think about we hear a lot with some of the as we go forward here in the committees, data is everything. As far as and what to do with that data really becomes what can you do with that data. I mean, there's sky's the limit, I think, with some of that stuff. Obviously there's some hurdles that we have in the utility aspect of things about that data, but that really you can put with an intelligent model, you can put all kinds of data, usable data there that can be used by different things. And really I look at some of the visions and the conversations we've had here at my company, PPL, that really that model that we're building, that 3D model with all this data, is becoming the center point to almost everything out there. And really kind of neat when you think about it, when you're working on something that everybody's going to use, everybody's going to see, gives you that importance and that pride in what you're creating.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And that's where we see all the conversations now around digital twins and this metaverse, the spatial web, right? All of it needs that 3D content, or otherwise there's not a lot to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it's all got to be grounded somewhere, and really that seems to be, for the most part, and a lot of that, it's on the 3D model side of things. It seems to be where a lot of that stuff's going to be grounded at or linked to based on the model, which presents its own challenges in there, but it's a nice challenge. I think back to some of the things that I've accomplished with the 3D, it's always getting those challenges completed and getting something to work the right way and to show up this way, or writing on a logic code and have it function the way you want it to function. And I think those are always the neat things, and kind of break up the day-to-day when you can get on some of those things and look into some of that new stuff.
It's always good. Like, that's one of the reasons we started that Innovative Solutions Committee with Ernie Barton from Southern. I mean, the purpose is to look far down the road and see what's coming, what's really useful, not just the marketing noise around technology, but what are the things we could really take advantage of. And, you need to think about that now as you're adding all this data to the 3D models, right? Like, you need to kind of prepare at least to know what's coming down.
I always tell people, when you're looking at things, you got to have an eye to the future. And that was, told to me, and I share that same message, to keep an eye on, it not just about what you want to do today to accomplish today. It's about, what do you want to do in the future? What would you like this to do? Because you can definitely, it's not that you would fail doing it in the future, by no means, but it might be a little bit harder to correct it, where, you can do a simple way as you put things together today, individualize things today will help you tomorrow. And I think a lot of that comes from keeping that eye, what could be next.
There you go. Yep. One little attribute in the metadata today, and all of a sudden you can do all these connections downstream you didn't think about, but you have to go back and add it to 18,000 models. It's little more painful.
I've had to go through, I'll speak from some of my experience. When we started out, you had your list of properties, and
Yeah.
well, when you're getting thrown all these models and the way we were doing everything, just dumping and trying to build our library up and everything. Well, some stuff wasn't exactly perfect, and I don't remember how many parts were in the list. I mean, we're talking hundreds, I think even thousands of parts that I had to go through. And I think it was fix one or two properties. I literally had to go through our vault and fix all these properties of all these parts. And I remember, it's like, okay, today I'm going to work on it for an hour and just cross these off. And it took me days, weeks to do it. But, one of those things, but you can manage. It was managed at least, that we were able to, somebody was able to capture the data and put it in a spreadsheet so I can kind of follow along. Okay, what did I need to edit? What parts do I really need, and then find them. And it wasn't that bad, other than the fact that you had to go through the amount of parts that you actually had to go through. But since then, I think we're much better off. Hey, everything got updated and whatnot, so we don't have to worry about those mistakes hopefully happening again.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you do once and you never forget.
Nope, you never forget.
No, it's some great points, man. And so I wanted to ask you before we finish up the 10th anniversary, man, the live event going into Nashville. You've been around for so long at the SDSIC. Is there anything kind of special you want to see happening on the 10th year?
Just more people get involved. Don't be afraid to, speak up or, bring your questions forward. New and old people. It doesn't matter whether you've been there before and had just a couple people, they've been there before, were a great part, and then, jobs change or whatever, but we've seen them come back, and I encourage them to stay involved and for new people to get involved on there. But there's no dumb questions, that type of thing out there. So I think, and hopefully, we look back at these 10 years of where we were in the beginning, and, you really, for folks like myself that have been involved for so long, you really see the growth of what's changed between, what we do today and what we had been doing. And, of course, all the technology. I mean, like we said before, a lot of that stuff has been rooted in here at the consortium. It's changed because of, the challenges and stuff that we faced together and whatnot. So I'm encouraged to see what new things will be developing in the next 10 years and beyond.
Yeah, and it's true. Like a lot of the evolution that comes from it, from the software vendors, the SBS and Autodesk and Bentley out there, now Primtech and all those guys coming in and watching and listening, and you have such a stronger voice with the SDSIC because you're as strong as every single utility that's joined.
Yeah,
it's not just one utility asking for a feature or an automation function or something. It's everybody that gets together, and it's pretty compelling for a software vendor to listen to.
Yeah, how they piece it all together, but you can see the voice of the consortium has weighed on these software companies, and you see the changes over the years that made to these programs and stuff for our benefit. So they're not going to discover that stuff or do any of that stuff if nobody says anything. So, somebody's got to say, bring it up, and then, everybody, oh yeah, that's a good idea. It'd really be nice if the program did that, or, work this way instead of that way. And we've seen those changes come across. So, definitely our voice means something.
There's been a lot of features that have been set up and come out of the SDSIC.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that our software, partners that have been involved, they send folks to the face-to-face there, you can chat and really see what's the pains or, what the challenges the consortium faces and really take that back to their companies and do something about it. So it's encouraging.
Awesome, man. Anything else you want to touch on before we close up?
I just share a little bit, for those out there, maybe, looking at this and thinking about the benefits of 3D. I'll share a little bit of a story that we had as far as one of our, and this is going back a number of years. Now of an old project we were doing. We were still kind of new at 3D. We had, kind of our philosophy done and model library built, and we get challenged to do a project, a brownfield project. We were doing something that wasn't a little bit out of the norm that we were doing. It was a small project, but the engineer really wanted to do it in 3D. One of the things, we were changing the location of some switches, and the field had concerns on where that switch was. Would there be access to that switch? And we kind of modeled all, did the design and stuff in 3D, worked through that, and was able to, the design went real quick because of a couple visual aids just sharing some screenshots, and you can created all that stuff. But I remember going to a meeting, a pre-construction meeting, and the field was there and really plainly showed him, didn't really use anything, any kind of presentation software, just really opened up the model. We had a figure modeled of like a 6-foot person, just to show, how a person could be. And really, it was a pole operated switch. I just had him holding like a pole that, a 10-foot pole that they would have used, and just kind of moved him around the model with all within Inventor. Like I said, no fancy software in presenting, but and by showing them that, answered, there was no follow-up questions as far as that issue. That made everything, answered all their questions. Would there be enough room to get back there and whatnot? And so that was, a great experience. But as we continued on the project, and we had to add steel to the structure, and for whatever reason, I don't remember, I got to go out to the field, and I got to actually talk to the field crew, which, drafter never does.
Yeah.
Never does. But I was out there, and they were doing 2 structures, the same thing on both structures. And they had the one done. And the guy told me, I said, I was explaining to him that we did this in 3D, we did in new. So I'm just kind of curious, how did things go? And he said, well, to be quite frank, this is the easiest project I've ever worked on. And nice. He said, the steel went up. He said, we've always had trouble. He said, I budgeted 3 days to hang the steel on the structure that needed to be hung up to hang the new equipment. They did it in a day because everything went smoothly. He said, I have all the confidence in the world on the other side of it that it's going to go up just as smoothly. And I think back to that's one of the benefits of 3D, being able to put all those pieces of steel together and kind of like bolt it together yourself within a program and everything, and have all the pieces. They had all the pieces. There were no material issues with anything at that site. So really, and that was one of our early on projects and stuff. But to hear that time was saved out in the field, and material was done back to the design things, just with the simple pictures, and not even doing kind of like a full-on presentation, just literally opening up the model and showing it, answered everybody's questions. It went smooth from my perspective. I don't know about other areas of the project or whatever, but from my perspective on the physical side of things, everything you couldn't, I don't think you could have asked for anything better at that time.
Wow.
So just wanted to share a little bit of some actual project experience applying this. I think that's a little bit where some people struggle out with doing this. We want to get, and we want to do 3D models, but how do we apply it to those projects? And it's on small projects like that you can really try and start. You can kind of work through some of those workflow things. It's still not even some of the companies like ourselves that are starting really to do more and more. Look at there's still challenges within that. How do you get that day-to-day stuff in there? And really it comes back to that model being the center point. I mean, we're working on something now where the drawings are becoming less and less important, the actual 2D prints, which is ultimately, when you talk to some people out there in the industry, really where you want to go with this stuff. You have a model now, and you want to kind of put that model in the hands, and that model be the record and stuff. What do you need drawings for? And they're really just being treated for construction. And it seems that's kind of our latest of what we're doing and trying to accomplish.
It's such a good message, because it's more work to get the model library set up than it is to modify 2D brownfield prints, old station prints. It's a lot easier to stretch them and clean them and just modify stuff that way. It's a lot more work, obviously, to build a 3D model library and get it up. But there's so many benefits that it just quickly, as you just said, 3 days to 1 day in the field. That's expensive.
Yeah, from where I came from in a manufacturer, time in the field was everything. It didn't matter, kind of somewhat the time that we spent in the office. If we could save that time in the field, cut any of that down from having a crew or equipment out there, if you can cut any of that down, the company was saving money or, making more money because, we can put them on other projects and stuff. So that was the name of the game. So I think anytime you hear any of that, it's people perk their ears perk up and whatnot, so that, I could save time. I could save money then. It's all about the important dollar.
Yeah. Well, and you think of the field crew that's out there and having to be out there for 3 days versus 1 day.
Yeah. Or, if you're trying to get something done in between weather, the storm just cleared up and we got an opening, but it's only going to be so long until the next one rolls in.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, in our environment outages, so the least amount of time you need to take that outage, the better.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Well, that's where it starts to pay off, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Dude, that's such a good message, man. I love it. You're promoting the physical group already. Always promoting, always selling. So there you go. Join Josh, get on the calls. Show and tell is awesome, and bring your questions, right? No bad questions.
Yep, no bad questions. Love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this today, Josh.
Yep. Thank you. And for anybody listening out there, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Power Up Podcast today. If you enjoyed this conversation and you're not yet a member of the SDSIC, join for free at sdsconsortium.com. Be part of the community and all these great conversations. And maybe you'll be the next guest on the Power Up Podcast.